let's get into some high school stuff. I mean, the season obviously is starting this week. It's kind of the big news around the state for baseball fans. But we last week talked through, I think it was 25 through 17, or kind of that range of teams that might be ranked in 25 through 17. But this week, we will now have our Power 25 officially complete. So we'll kind of talk through some of those teams, basically 16 down to 1, and then some teams to watch. Keep an eye out on throughout the year. But just a reminder, keep an eye out for our scout blogs, daily roundup, diamond notes, and player of the week. That'll be coming out each week now with the high school season started. But yeah, I mean, guys, kicking it off, like Glenwood is number 16 in the Power 25. I mean, they've got Cam Appenzeller and Dylan Huff, so that's probably one of the better 1-2 punches in the state in terms of pitching, I would think. I mean, Appenzeller's one of the top prospects in the country, and he's the number one player in the state. And Huff is just another really good arm as well. So I know they've had some injuries in their team, but I mean, their pitching is really good, and they're a team that always finds ways to win. So I think Glenwood there at number 16 just makes sense. But yeah, the next team down, number 15, Huntley, like Hammett, Def. I don't know if you guys want to add anything on them.
Yeah, Huntley's always good, right? When I was digging into them, writing their story, like they're going for their 8th straight Fox Valley title. Like, I think a common theme, just when looking into the Fox Valley Conference, just how good it is, and the fact that Huntley is going for their 8th straight title. Like, it's ridiculous. It's a credit to Coach Jakubowski out there. He runs a fantastic program. I feel like the times I saw Huntley last year, like those guys just play hard, and he gets them to play the right way. Like, they're always going to have talent coming through there as well. So last year I feel like they started in a similar spot, but I think the encouraging thing with Huntley is, like, last year their main contributors were all pretty much sophomores and juniors. So they're all a year older now. But I really like their arms, man. Like, Drew Borkowski's a really good arm. They have maybe the best power bat in the state with AJ Putty. Like, that guy had, I want to say, 11 homers or something ridiculous last spring. So they've got a ton of talent. The thing is just, navigating that conference, but history shows that they haven't had too much issue with that over really the last decade. So that's what I got on Huntley.
Yeah, and kind of moving down to Muscuda at number 14. I think they're kind of similar to Glenwood in the way that they have two really legit arms in Austin Musso and Darren Klein. And I was just looking through the stats from last year. I know Darren Klein had really good numbers, and Musso is just a really good arm too. One of the top in the 2025 class. And they've got some other guys too on the mound. I think pitching and defense will probably be some of their strengths. And offensively, I think Muscuda and a lot of these teams, it's kind of, they can just put it together. They have good coaching. They have, the ability to just score runs and play the game the right way. And I think Muscuda will be one of those top teams in Southern Illinois and just the state as a whole.
And Glenwood, I feel like always is like that. They've got guys up and down their roster, Gavin, that, like, I'll go watch them play and I won't know half their roster. Whether it means they're football players, basketball players, just do a whole bunch of stuff down there, and they're athletes. But they're deep. I mean, there's always talent coming through that program. And Muscuda, like, we didn't know a couple of their guys until just this past winter. We got to look at them at showcases, and two left-handed hitters that we think could impact the lineup, more than we already knew that they had coming through. So that's always a good sign. It makes us feel a little bit better when we're really trying to figure out the strengths of these clubs. Because let's be honest, there's no perfect science. We're going off a lot of, coaches' recommendations, but also our own personal knowledge and what we've seen. And coming in at number 13, I think, goes off of a lot of our personal knowledge. And we know most of this roster. And, man, they made a huge run last year. But Mount Carmel, another team in that CCL Blue. We mentioned the Fox Valley being a really good league. There's a lot of good leagues around the state, but, CCL Blue year in, year out, always one of the top. And, man, Mount Carmel, they made it all the way to a super sectional last year. They will be without Ian Tosi this year, but Tyler, fill us in, because I know offensively they look really, really strong. They were young last year and bring back pretty much everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the theme with Mount Carmel to me is like ceiling. That's what I just kept thinking in my head when I'm writing this story is like, all right, they might have one of the higher ceilings out of any team in the state, even without Ian Tosi. Like, they didn't have TJ McQuillan last year, like, who's one of the best bats in the region, and you could make the case nationally when he's healthy. Like, they get him back hopefully for the entire year this year. Anthony Chavez broke out last year. He was awesome. He led the team in pretty much every offensive category. So you get him back, right? So there's also guys like Joey Ireland, Logan Fernandez. The list goes on with Mount Carmel. The biggest thing is, like, with losing Tosi, right? Somebody's gonna have to step up and be the ace of that staff. Now, might be Jake Matisse, it might be Connor Ellentenney, who's going to Notre Dame. So the biggest thing is just if they can hit their ceiling, if those guys with a ton of potential can play like we think they can, I wouldn't be surprised if they're playing in Joliet at the end of the year. Like, they were one run away from beating Pravi last year in that super sectional game. So it's going to be a dogfight. Like, they're in the CCL Blue too, so those guys are going to be battle tested throughout the year. But yeah, biggest thing with Mount Carmel is, like, ceiling for me. They have a super high ceiling.
They've got catchers too. Like, we were talking through their team, and it's always like, all right, who's up the middle of the field in high school baseball is very important. They've got Mario Medina behind the plate. They also have Pancho Vasquez, who can do a little bit of everything. So I do like the position they're in. And talking through them, they were a team where if they did have Ian Tosi, they'd be in our top 5 consideration.
Yeah.
Coming off the year that they had last year. So then it's like, okay, they don't have Tosi, who, for my money, he's one of those guys that if you had to win a game, like, he's towards the top of your list on giving him the ball. So that's a huge loss, right? Like, we're not minimizing that loss at all, but I think that kind of then warrants, okay, they need to come down a little bit, but where the heck do we slot them in? I think they're in a really good spot here. And shoot, right in front of them is another team that's, no stranger to making deep runs in the postseason. Joliet Catholic at the 3A level. Little different than Mount Carmel. Like, to me, they're going to be really led on the mound with Cooper Kabinski and obviously Lucas Grant going to Purdue. But they've got depth. They're kind of like Muscuda, kind of like Glenwood. Like, they'll bring out some football players on their baseball roster, guys we don't totally know or have a ton of great, info on, but man, they help fill out a lineup and they do some things and they're hard-nosed and they're tough and they play Jared Voss type of baseball, which they're going to be hard to beat in the postseason no matter what. But I'm not sure if anybody else had anything on them. They're good up the middle with Simulik and Pomado. Simulik at short, Pomado behind the plate, but go ahead, Pete.
No, I mean, pitching is a very common theme on this list. A lot of, like, the teams that we have ranked here are because they got depth on the mound, right? And Lucas Grant and Cooper Kabinski, 2 left-handers at that, like, that's going to make it, that in and of itself is already, a bonus to just having 2 good arms. They're both left-handed. And then 2 more southpaws. We got Rocco Zambalin, a junior that, he'll run up his fastball around the upper 80s, 90-mile-an-hour mark. And then Brady Tunkel, another southpaw that we really like. And then on, like, the other hand now, we got more right-handers, Ian Campbell. He'll get into the low 90s. Kyle Christensen, another junior, he'll bump upper 80s. And, Jacob Wojciechowski, that last name is...
I think you crushed it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I think so. Jacob Wojciechowski, junior, upper 80s as well. I mean, they just got arms for days. And then, like you said, Lucas Simulik and Pomado up the middle. If Simulik can really, losing Troyner hurts bad, right? That's, like, really... the main piece they lost with the offensively. So if Simulik can come into his own and really, help carry that lineup, I think that'll be kind of the piece they need to bring them to the next level. But no, we really like them on both sides of the ball. And like you said, they just, I mean, it's a small school, right? So everyone they bring in is like, they play multiple sports. They can do a lot of different things. They'll just bring in guys throughout the lineup. And yeah, they're always going to be well-disciplined and well-coached with Jared Voss over there.
No, Hammett, listening to you talk about JCA, go through all their pitchers, like, the fact that you've got an Ian Campbell that, doesn't have to be a guy, does not, and it's, hey, guy is ultra talented, like, talent through the roof, but maybe needs some more polish, or at least, like, could benefit from some more polish. And JCA is going to be able to, utilize him to his strengths, and probably get the most out of him. But having just a back end arm that, like you said, is upper 80s, low 90s, that's just kind of a bonus for you is huge. They also have, like, we at our preseason All-State, I'm upstairs watching some hitting going on, kind of running around at the event, but I get my eyes on John Kurbis, a left-handed hitting sophomore infielder that they have. And it's like, that was my first look at him, and I loved the swing. So they've always got guys coming through like that. They'll surprise us. They're going to be a tough out. They're going to play good ball. And staying in the Chicagoland area, staying with private schools here, we're going to go back to the Chicago Catholic Blue. At number 11, we slotted St. Lawrence. Coach Lotus, Pete Lotus over there, has running the show for a long time, and every single year that he's been under the helm that I've been doing this, they're at the top of the conference. They're sitting in the top of our Power 25. They've long had talent for days coming through that program. And uniquely enough, like kind of like Mount Carmel, like they're going to be missing one of their top arms. And left-hander Joe Olson, who's going to Louisville, he'll most likely be out the entire spring. But like Mount Carmel, St. Lawrence has a plethora of arms and guys that are kind of ready to take that next step, be the guy if they have to. And they're going to have a deep lineup as well. And once they're another team that, for me, high school baseball, like coaching is huge. Teams that don't beat themselves, teams that can score in a multitude of ways, run the bases really good. Like that's something St. Lawrence hangs their hat on, is running the bases, being able to score, in a number of ways. And I think their club this year should be able to be, no different than years past, and definitely one to watch. So if I missed something on them, I know I didn't really get into the players at all.
No, you're right. I mean, Joe Olson definitely, that was going to hurt, but John Strasowski, he dominated last year. So I think he's more than ready to step up and take up, that ace role. And then Sam Chin right behind him. This is his first year on varsity. He very well could have pitched last year on varsity, I'm sure, as a sophomore, super talented, but they just didn't need him, right? They had a ton of depth. And there's no use in bringing him up to not pitch as much as he could on sophomores, right? Let him develop down there. But I think he has taken the next step for us this past winter. He's seen a tick in velocity. He was up to 87. And even if he's not pitching at 87, right? Even if he's at his kind of what we've seen in the past, like low 80s, just letting him pitch, and he's got a really good breaking ball, good changeup. That'll be extremely valuable in and of itself. But no, you're right. And you've mentioned in the past, Drew, for them, we'll watch their IO. They'll be 4 guys deep, and they're all really good. And you're like, who's that guy? Who's that guy? Who's that guy? They got a ton of depth, and they're going to be well coached as well. So yeah, good shout on them. They're definitely one to watch out for this year.
Ryan Wolschlager, I know we've had some tough last names on this call here already, but he's committed to Pepperdine, and he's not one of their, top 2 arms listed. Maybe he will be. Maybe that's, maybe they didn't list them in order. I don't want to get anybody, frazzled by that statement, but that's another arm that they have coming through. Jimmy Benson's a left-hander that I know has a high ceiling. And there's a lot of other names on that list that are, I'm sure, going to throw quality impact innings for them. And the other thing that I've always been impressed with, Coach Load, they know how to work their bullpen. Their relief pitchers, they know how to match up against guys. They do a really good job with that. So St. Lawrence coming in at number 11, and Gavin moving into the top 10 here. Leading us off, number 10, New Trier. And they're unique for me. This is a very unique spring for them, because this is the first year, and I wish I should have this off the top of my head, but probably the first year in 30 years without Mike Napoleon at the helm. All-time career wins leader in Illinois high school baseball. He finally hung him up after an unbelievable career up there at New Trier. But for the Trevians, who knows? I think it's talking X factors and writing these stories and what are going to be some X factors for clubs coming around the state. I think the new head coach, and it's Dusty Napoleon, and it's Mike's son, who is a baseball lifer. He was a former Division I coach at Northwestern. He's going to bring a ton of knowledge, and I would not expect any sort of drop off. I think it's unique because it's a different voice in the dugout, kind of leading the charge there. So, but man, they've got a good roster like they do every year, and should be another team to watch.
Yeah, Max Kaplan, that's the big piece they lost. He's already making big impact at the Division I level with USC Upstate, but they got a nice arm sliding in to kind of take over that role. Henrik Conniff, he was an arm that we've really liked in the past, and he had limited action last year. I'm not too sure if he got hurt or what happened, but I know I saw him at the Kickoff Classic, and then I know he really didn't pitch much the rest of the year, so I think he went down with some sort of injury. But he's a really dynamic arm. He can work up to 90 miles an hour, probably low 90s. And he's got like swing and miss stuff. He'll overpower lineups, and that's kind of what you feel confidence in that at the high school level. And then they got some interesting arms behind him too, like Mason Jurowicz going to St. Leo, nice, really good Division II school. He's a right-hander. Grant Campitelli, we saw him in the fall, another good one. And then Justice Hernandez, an underclassman, along with Harry Reeses and Jackie Ryder, just 3 sophomores that'll all, likely have impact innings on the mound for them. But then we look at the lineup, right? They bring back Trey Myers and Ben Toft, 2 of the best players in the state, and they've both been with the Trevians since they were sophomores. So, they got depth on both sides of the ball, and I think Dusty's got a really good squad he's working with. And they got a ton of catching depth, too, actually, with Nick Sitchell and Mason Bloom. I'm just looking at the roster right now. There's a ton of depth to go around and a ton of really good names that we like.
Yeah. Bloom should be in the outfield for him, but no, you mentioned the depth. Nick Sitchell for sure, he's one going to Richmond, and then no, you're good. Jake Bentavanga as well. Potent bat there. Just listening to you talk, like they are a deep lineup. They've got some impact, lefty, righty bats in the lineup. The one guy that they will lose, I know on the mound, Max Kaplan, huge loss. You felt good with him taking the ball against any team in the state. I really, really like James Novakovic. They had him at shortstop last year, left-hand hitting shortstop. He will no longer be with them. So, like every team, no team is just perfect, bringing back everybody except maybe Pravi. But no, every team's gonna have gaps and holes to fill. New Trier, I think shortstop will be kind of one of those positions. It's okay, who is going to fill that role? How are they going to do? Could impact, the ceiling of this club. And if we're kind of good there with New Trier, we can keep moving through the list here. Man, we're talking about the top 10 teams in the state now. We could talk on these teams for days. And it should be really fun to kind of see. What I love is see how this maps out throughout the year, go back at the end, see, all right, who did we miss on? Who did we really hit on? What team's not in the Power 25 that, we can kind of kid ourselves, what were we thinking not putting them in there? But Minooka is coming in at number 9 this year. And they're a really, really intriguing squad for me. I feel like they've got a lot of pieces. They've got some two-way guys, guys that will impact their lineup with the bat and on the mound, which can create some dynamics at times. I think to have that many two-way guys, then you want to make sure you have depth positionally because I look at the left side of their infield. They have Braden Zillis, who is shortstop, second base. He can kind of play all over the infield, but he'll probably man shortstop and pitch. So I think that creates some dynamics on arm health and okay, can he always play short when he's not pitching? And then you've got CJ DeKinga, who plays third base and pitches. So he'll be doing a little bit of both. But man, I love left-handed Zane Caves. He's one of my picks to click in just that 2026 class. They have him as well on the mound. And I'll open it up to you guys to talk through more of the club there, and I'm sure I'll have some things to say.
Yeah, Brayton Zillis, he was a first-team All-Stater for us last year. He was kind of their ace. Had a 0.5 ERA in 48 innings. And we had him as a two-way All-Stater. So, he had a great year with the bat as well. So yeah, he's kind of leading that rotation, and then we got Zane Caves, like you said, the really good southpaw. He'll be upper 80s. We're really confident in him this year, and then DeKinga. He's primarily a position guy, but he can really pitch too. He pitched at the future games for us a little bit, and then we got Sean Sample, Cam Rujewicz, Isaac Goddard. Those guys are all just coming out of the pen, so there's depth, and a lot of those guys will be playing roles on the other side of the ball as well. But yeah, Zillis. Going back to Zillis, he hit 407 last year. We're fully expecting him to, repeat his success this year. And then I know you had mentioned kind of the infield Drew. We got Jason Dewey as well, a junior that we've really liked in the past. He saw time last year for them as a sophomore, and he's a really good defensive middle guy as well. And then just some other names we like. We like Isaac Goddard, and we like Carter Lennington, a Lincoln Land commit. So they got names up and down. We're really confident in them this year.
Red Harris at first base is a power
Mm-hmm.
bat that we've seen. I really like the swing. We talked just moments ago about like, okay, players that every team's gonna lose and have to replace. Like St. Lawrence lost Jamison Martin, who's playing as a freshman for Minnesota and holding his own up there. But Manuka, I mean, they lost a draft. They lost Nate George, who was one of the most impactful position players in the state last year. Could kind of do it all, hit for average, hit for power, and also ran the bases really well. Played a really good center field. So hey, they're going to have to replace that. We're going to have to see how it looks, but I love Manuka on paper and what it looks like. And, Zane Caves being that PO who also plays 3 sports could be a breakout year for him because I felt like in 2024, he just continued to trend the right direction every time we saw him. So it may take him a while to get going coming off football, basketball, everything he's got, but it's all about prepping for that middle of May postseason run anyway. So Manuka, number 9. Moving through the list here, we've got Lamont at number 8. And I think going through this, like they were one club that last year we probably just did not give enough love to early in the year, throughout the year. And they went on and kind of under the radar, made a really good postseason run, made it to state. And they bring back a lot of the pieces that they had last year for that state run. Like Jacob Parr, to me, is one of my favorite guys. It's just been a double arrow up, a left-hand hitting outfielder they have. But they've got some pieces on the mound. They've got just an overall, a very, very balanced, solid group.
Yeah, 100%. Like, kind of touching on it earlier, like the cool thing with this Power 25 is like looking at the end of the year, who's going to emerge? That was Lamont for us last year, right? Like they went all the way to state for 3A. They ended up getting second, losing to Crystal Lake Central. But Lamont brings back pretty much everyone from that team, and I think that's why like we're so high on them to start this year. Just on the mound too, like Shea Glotzbach is a guy that really popped for me at Illinois State games. I'd never seen him until that point, and that's likely going to be the ace of their staff, and he's also going to hit in the middle of their lineup. So they've got him. They've got Cannon Madej, a left-handed pitcher who's going to give them innings. Matt Devoy. And Devoy and Glotzbach are both going to Missouri St. Louis. So they've got talent up and down the roster. Brett Tucker's another bat we really like. So I've actually got a little bit more to say on Lamont later in the show, so I'm not going to spoil all of that. But, yeah, we really like Lamont. They've got a lot coming back this year.
I think their biggest question or piece to replace is going to be behind the plate. Losing Noah Tamaris, he was a multi-year starter for them. I think since his sophomore year, he was kind of manning that position behind home. So we'll see what happens there in Lamont. But, bright 2025 ahead, just looking at them on paper. And then let me make sure that I'm getting back to the right spot here so that we can keep moving through the list. But next up, number 7, which all these teams are intriguing, but like this team is ultra intriguing to me. They've got an influx of new players coming on their roster this spring, but Normal Community, they look to me at least, and I know we all, agreed on how we rolled this out, but they look like they've got the most complete, most talent, most impactful lineup in Central Illinois. And just up and down, I think positionally really is where I get like most excited with them. And if they can get enough on the mound, I think they're going to be an ultra dangerous club. But they were 33-4 last year. I mean, they were a mainstay in our, top 10 of our Power 25. And they lost a really good arm in Ethan Eberly. And they lost a couple other senior arms. Brady Bankston was one. But Ethan Eberly, man, like he dominated. He basically struck out the world is what it seemed like. Every time he took the ball, he was double-digit strikeouts. And really didn't even matter how many innings he was throwing. If he threw, 3+, he was striking out double digits. But what do we got on Normal Community?
Yeah, I mean, they lost Eberly, like you said, but they bring in Gavin Swartz, Indiana commit, and if he can kind of become that ace for Community, I think they're going to be a pretty strong team. And they have Jonah Roper coming back. He was injured, but he's coming off injury this year. He will be back, and he's like a mid-upper 80s guy that we've seen before. They've got Luke Clunky, mid-80s guy as well. And then, yeah, offensively, you got Kyle Beatty coming back. He's kind of your leader. He's their shortstop. And then you've got Gavin Michaels transferring in. And I think that middle infield is probably going to be one of the best in the state with Beatty and Michaels. And then, yeah, I mean, they're always going to have arms that maybe we haven't seen. And, I mean, you've got two good catchers in Drew Stevens and Max Heineman. And Swartz can hit, too. Like, he'll probably play first base, DH a little bit for them. But, I mean, yeah, they've got a lot of talent on this roster. And I mean, they're going to be a team that's probably going to win a lot of games again this year, I would assume.
Yeah, one of the best infields in the state, especially when you factor in the catchers. Drew Stevens continues to get better. Like, he showed off a lot of power at the preseason All-State. He had some arm strength behind the plate, and I think Heineman is probably versatile enough to play multiple positions, or one of them will DH, one of them will catch. And you said it, Swartz swings the bat a little bit too. I like the bat, left-handed hitter. So a very, very interesting club this year that ceiling-wise is probably one of the higher ceilings in the state. I think it'll all just kind of depend on how they come together. But they were 18-0 in conference last year. I've got high hopes for them. And I think, really it'll be what happens on the mound and maybe a couple guys who can step up in the outfield. But definitely a team to know across the state and one of the ones we are highest on coming into this year. But now, at number 6, we went with Brother Rice. So Brother Rice, under Coach McBride, they're no shortage of success, I would say. He made it to state 2 years ago. Last year was, I think, an anomaly for them. They were 20-18. They were very young positionally, and I just looking at their club, they bring back so much. And some of those young guys are now old, but what's really crazy is there's even younger guys now coming up that are extremely, extremely talented. So they've got some names on the mound that I think will, be more than good enough to compete. And then positionally, they're one of the more balanced, deeper lineups in the state, I would say.
Yeah, not to one-up Gavin or anything here. I know he touched on normal communities, middle infield, but my money, man, Brother Rice has the best shortstop, second base duo in the or not in the country, in the state. Sorry, with Gavin Triesenberg and
country. Let's get aggressive.
But I mean, with Triesenberg and Natanic, both of those guys can absolutely pick it, and you could really do whatever you want. You could flip them at short and second, and there probably wouldn't be a ton of drop off either way. If I had to guess, Triesenberg's probably going to be at short, and Natanic will be at second to save Natanic's arm because he's also a pitcher for Brother Rice. He's likely going to be their closer this year, but there is talent up and down the roster, and it's spread out too. There's a good amount of seniors, good amount of juniors, and good amount of sophomores, and the sophomore class is really exciting. They've got Brady Cunningham, who might end up being the number one on the team, and he can also swing it. He's a super strong kid for a sophomore. You got Colin Campbell, who's a middle infielder going to Louisville, but he might not even play middle infield this year. But they'll find a spot for him because the kid can hit. You've also got Aiden Dillon, Gavin Stanislawski, Anthony Cardilano. All those guys are sophomores, and they're all going to play on varsity this year and play big roles. But they also have Braden McKendrick on the mound, a really good southpaw. They get Tag Callahan back. They'll have Danny Sheehan in that senior class as well. So, man, there's no shortage of talent on this year's Brother Rice team.
I mean, it speaks to the depth.
Sorry.
No, yeah, sorry. It speaks to the depth they have to where they can just throw Natanic into the closer role. No, we don't need you to eat 50 innings on the mound. You can just go throw, just the last inning when we're ahead. We don't need you to be that guy that helps lead us on the mound. He's a legit arm. He can really spin it. He was up to 90, 91 maybe, at least 90 at our pro case. And he's a real arm, and they don't even need him to start. So that just says a lot to me.
Yeah, and he'd probably start almost any other school in the state.
Oh, he'd be the ace at a lot of them. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
No, and that's why they are where they're at in our rankings. And the beautiful thing of it too is okay, this year when they go to Natanic late in the game, they really shouldn't have to mess around with their infield. If Nojava is playing third, if Natanic was playing second, Colin Campbell will slide right in there, and he can really, really play. Like it, it's it even gives them more flexibility if they wanted to mess around with their infield. You know, if they wanted to move Nojava somewhere, and play Natanic or somebody, or Triesenberg at third and get Campbell in, like they're gonna have so much flexibility with the depth of their roster. That, you know, whether it's injuries, whether it's guys performing, like they're going to be able to mix and match and get to their best lineup when the time comes. So, no, Coach McBride has plenty to work with over there. And man, those 27s are extremely talented. So, regardless of what happens this year, like the future's still bright, you know, the next couple of years with the Crusaders. Coming in at number 5 is, I think I put it in my director's note on this team, but I think they feature one of the highest ceilings in the state. And it's Libertyville is who we went with at number 5. I know it's not a surprise. These have all been rolled out here by Wednesday, the full list and everything. But they were 26-10-2 last year. And I wouldn't say it's like as deep of a club as maybe Brother Rice, 1-9 positionally, and even outside of that, like guys that they'll have coming off the bench. But wow, their starters and their top are really, really interesting. So I won't steal the thunder of you guys if you wrote up this team, but plenty to touch on here.
Sure. I mean, yeah, their starting pitching is ridiculous. We'll start with Josh Holst. I mean, recently uncommitted, still on the market, but he's going to be he's got Power 5, Power 4 potential. Like he'll pitch Division 1 for sure. Big fastball. Last year he had a 1.4 ERA, struck out 86 people in 50 innings. So, I mean, it's just a bullying fastball. Like he is right at you in the zone. He'll challenge you, and he'll get swing and miss just with the fastball. So we really like him. And then Chase Lockwood, he was a sophomore. Josh is a senior this year, but Chase he was a sophomore last year, and he saw a ton of time too. He threw 52 innings for him, and he had a 0.6 ERA. So I mean, he had a huge role for them last year, and he will play likely just as big, if not bigger, of a role this year. And then a nice little number 3, they got Anthony Fry going to Illinois Wesleyan. He had 24 innings last year. I believe he got hurt, so his season got cut a little short, but he had a 0.8 ERA. And then, oh, by the way, they got 95 with Brady Bunick as a sophomore. Like, that kid, he was the X factor that I chose for them, because if he is able to even, like, give us a portion of what we think he can do, he is going to be massive for them. He is going to, like, I mean, man, 95 as a sophomore is pretty much unheard of. I mean, he gave us, like, the loudest showing, at least the loudest showing I've ever seen at that event. And, man, if he can even, like I said, give us a portion of what we think he can be, they are going to be special on the mound and super deep as well. And then even, I mean, I'm sure, go ahead, Drew.
No, you're getting in on all the right stuff here. I mean, reliever wise, like Steven Gavrick's sitting back there as like their 9th arm, and he's a Division 1 wide receiver football commit, who has been like mid upper 80s and easy for us with like long levers. It's like he could be 86, 90 this spring and just pitch, ho hum midweek games. Like, they have a lot of guys to choose from. Ryan Wilberding's one that I'm, watching as young guys that they have kind of helping fill out this lineup. Because I would say, like, if you want to nitpick Libertyville and their weakness, like, they've got to fill out the back half of this lineup. Brock Williams is a guy that we've known for a while, but it looks like recently he's turned into more of a football recruit, like big time tight end recruit. And Tyler, I know you're a Nittany Lions fan, and I believe they might be on him for football. But we'll see what he can do on the baseball field this year. And I love the Lockwoods. They're just baseball players. Like, they are going to be very strong up the middle. Quinn Shambo is as dynamic as it gets behind the plate, like shutting down the running game, stealing outs by being able to throw behind guys. Brady Bunick, you mentioned it. Like, we'll see. Like, I don't know. I like ranking Libertyville where we rank them, even if it was without Brady Bunick. And then you throw Brady Bunick in the mix, and it's like, if this guy comes in and can actually, control his arsenal and throw strikes and repeat and handle the running game and all that stuff, like, it's the most dynamic stuff potentially in the Midwest, for that class, that age. Now we love Caden Wozniewski, but man, him and Brady Bunick are two highly, highly talented sophomores. So I may have missed something. I may have kind of doubled up already on stuff you talked about, Pete. But no, this is by
No.
far, I think, the most talent Coach Thompson's had over there.
Yeah, and then they got Nico Harper, another junior. He's just a lefty up to 87, ho-hum. Like another one they'll just run out in the bullpen. But no, I love Wilberding. And like you said, I really like the Lockwoods. Even Chase, like I think he can really swing it. He's a nice little middle infield option. And then even Josh Holst, like he'll hit in the middle of their lineup, and he's got a ton of juice from the left side. So
Well, and like a guy like Madden Kotz, we saw at the preseason All-State, like left-handed hitting infielder. It's like if they needed a guy, he could maybe come up, but who knows? Like they may not need him. He's a 27. So a lot of pieces there.
yeah, and then there was a lot of 27s that we saw this winter that we really like. So like they're going to be good for a while. But no, I really liked writing up this team and seeing kind of the pieces they had. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that they'll make a pretty deep run this year.
And then at number 4, just moving right along, was probably one of the biggest sleepers, or maybe not sleeper, but surprises from last year, McHenry. They went 30-8 last year, made a deep run in the postseason, and a lot of it had to do with a freshman impact player in Caden Wozniewski, who I just mentioned. But Tyler, get in here on this club looking at 2025.
Yeah, I think there's a real common theme here with these top teams, and it's arms. You saw it last year, like a team like Conant made it all the way to state because they had 2 lethal arms in Bryce Loger and Franklin Kirchner. McHenry's got an unreal 1-2 punch with Brandon Shannon and Caden Wozniewski. Like, for me, Wozniewski was the X factor when I wrote him down. Like, he batted .487 last year as a freshman on varsity in that conference. Like, that's ridiculous. And he might be an even better arm. Like, that's how good he was with the bat. Similar to Libertyville, like, they lost some college bats. I think that would be my biggest question mark with this team, is just filling out the back half of the lineup. But, like, they've also got Carver Cone, who's going to be on varsity from day one as a freshman. He's the number 1 player in the state right now for us. For that freshman class, he's uber talented from both sides of the plate, can really play defense out there in center field as well. But, another guy that might be a sleeper is Landon Clements on the infield, like guy who really showed well for us earlier this winter. And like I already touched on Shannon and Wozniewski, but they've also got a guy like Bryson Elbrecht, who I'm a huge fan of, who will likely be the 3 for them. But like when they get into tournament time, like he's going to be awesome to have to come out of the pen for either of those guys if they need it. So there's even more arms to touch on. Like they've got a guy like Scotty Cole, who, Drew, I know you were a huge fan of at our McHenry preseason ID. They've got Zach Reddy. They've just got a ton of talent. Like I said, the biggest question mark for me just when I was writing them up was probably the back half of the lineup. But man, they've got a really good team.
Well, Scotty Cole was he came out of the woodworks this winter, like a mid-80s fastball with good spin on the off-speed. And it was one of those things where it's like, you got to be kidding me. McHenry has another like legitimate arm. And then I know he also showed well as a position guy. So just a perfect depth guy there for McHenry that they'll have to lean on. And you listen to Libertyville, they've got all these arms. They've got some big velo and Bunick, and they've got, the catcher in Quinn Shambo. Looking at McHenry, okay, who can handle Brandon Shannon? Who can handle Caden Wozniewski? Like, that is a big question. They've got a catcher in AJ Chavera, who's committed to Rock Valley. So they've got a college catcher that, to me, who's playing up your middle. And I really like what McHenry has there. And now we're getting into the top 3. So I know a lot of talking here on these teams, but man, these top 3 I think are very, very strong. They were strong last year. They don't lose a ton, and they bring back a lot, and they bring up a lot, I would say, as like these young guys coming through in some of these systems. But, one team that had a huge year last year that I really like at number 3 is Lincoln Way West. And we've talked about it here now, Hammett. I know you wrote them up, but pitching being paramount. Libertyville, McHenry, I think that's, why we really, really liked them. And Lincoln Way West, like maybe just as strong, on the mound with who they pump out there with Connor Essenberg, and then you've got Michael Pettit, and you've got Lucas Acevedo. Three highly, highly capable arms. So fill me in on the rest. Why, maybe even about those three arms, but wow, that's quite the trio just to lead off.
Yeah, I mean, they got a ton of arms, like you said. I mean, Essenberg's one of those guys, like, he's towards the top of the list for someone I would pick to go win me a game right now. And he's got a ton of ceiling left, too. I think he's a really, really intriguing and dynamic prospect on both sides of the ball. So he's going to impact them greatly on both sides. Same with Lucas Acevedo. Lucas will play shortstop for him, and he's an arm that we really like as well. He's got 3 pitches for strikes. He'll throw a ton of strikes. He'll be around 90 miles an hour. And then, like you said, Pettit, I mean, he didn't throw a ton for him last year, right? He kind of came up towards the end, like in the playoffs. So it's an expanded role for him this year, but we have a ton of confidence in him. We think he's going to, make an impact greatly for him. And then they got, like, numerous college arms throughout this. We got Adam Girl going to Parkside, Tyler Bartley going to Rock Valley, and then Anthony Vita. He was a name that Coach thinks is going to play a big role for them on both sides of the ball. He's going to Drury. And then Alex Macias going to St. Xavier. So they got depth. They got high-end talent and depth. That's important. So, and then the lineup, like, I mean, like we said, Essenberg and Acevedo, they'll kind of lead that lineup. And then we got Jackson Mansker, too. He's a player that we liked a lot over the years. He's ranked number 95 in the state. Ian Hazlip, state gamer. I mean, they got talent up and down, and they had a great year last year, winning over 30 games. So we're really high on them.
I'm a huge fan of Lincoln Way West coming into this spring, and I don't think you get much better than having those top-end 2 lefties there, and Connor Essenberg and Michael Pettit. And you mentioned Pete, like he didn't throw a ton last year, but they went to him in the playoffs in a do-or-die game, and I saw him show really good stuff, and then he just kind of continued to do that throughout 2024. Like, I have really, really big expectations for Michael Pettit. I think he's going to be an arm that, come the end of the spring, like, we're probably going to need to collect his stats for, all-state considerations. And then Lucas Acevedo, like you mentioned, both he and Essenberg have been varsity impact guys for 3 years now. So they are no stranger. They've got unfinished business. Like, they lost to Pravi in the playoffs. Pravi goes on to win state. So I'm sure there's plenty of motivation down there in the Frankfort, New Lenox area. Number 2, Edwardsville. Should not be any surprise. Maybe the only surprise is that they're number 2 and not number 1. But Edwardsville made it to state once again last year. I feel like they have been to Joliet pretty much every year over the last 6-7 years, and they've taken home the crown a couple times as well. Coming into last year, they had won 2 straight. So they were 32-9. They ended up getting 3rd place last year, but I mean, there's really not much to talk about as far as weaknesses with this group. Like, they have talent coming through that program every year. They're another team that, like, despite being a mainstay towards the top, like, you go watch them play, they'll always have a guy or 2 in their lineup that, like, we don't know about. Whether it's their multi-sport guy or they just, haven't been to something. But their impact in their lineup, and he goes about, like, I feel like 20 deep when it comes to their position players and the different lineups he can choose. And then you look at their arms this year, I mean, they're loaded, and they lost Joe Chirotto, who's arguably their most talented prospect. He's a senior this year. They lost him right before playoffs last year. He was their impact center fielder, also their number 1 on the mound, and they make it to state. They didn't lose anything, going into the playoffs. So sorry, Gav. I know I'm probably stealing some of your thunder here, but what else do you have there? Because I know Joe Chirotto's back, ready to roll.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it on the head there, but just writing this team up, like, they probably have one of the deepest pitching staffs in the state. You have your 3 starting pitchers in Joe Chirotto, Chase Milburn, who was kind of their ace last year. He went 10-0 with a sub-1 ERA, and they have Tony Eberlin, who we just saw up to 90, but he was 7-2 last year. And then you look at kind of their relievers, and they've got Hunter Ball, Tyler Powell, Ethan Stewart, Dax Dunnell, all guys that are going to be in the mid-upper 80s. And then you've got other guys that Coach Funk listed in here: Eric Herman, Tristan Lance, Tyler Rudd, Gavin Impanus, I think is how you say it, Impanus maybe. But
sounds
all,
perfect.
Yeah, all seniors, and they're gonna just have a lot of depth. And the way Coach Funk coaches, I'm sure that their pitchers are gonna be guys that are gonna attack. They're gonna throw strikes. They're gonna know what to do in different game situations. And then at the plate, the same thing. Like, they're gonna be a very well coached team. And you look at guys like Lucas Krebs, who's their shortstop, committed to Illinois. Grayson Rathgeb, outfielder, going to Maryville. And then obviously Chiroto is a two-way, so he's going to be back this year playing the outfield for them when he's not on the mound. And like, they just have so many guys that will do the right thing for them because they're coached the right way. They know how to play the game, and yeah, they're gonna win some games this year because of their pitching. But then also they're gonna have guys that they get on base. They're gonna steal bases. They're gonna play the game right.
Goodness, you mentioned the depth on the staff, but then you look at the roster preview that I was just kind of pulling up as you're talking here. It's like every guy is going to play college baseball. All their depth guys are college baseball players. And then they have young guys coming through the mix as well. So, I mean, we talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but coaches in high school baseball, I feel like, play a huge factor. And Coach Funkhauser is going to have an extremely deep, talented team to work with. He's going to be able to mix and match the arms. Hunter Ball is, like, to me, one of my favorite players in the state. What he can do as a position player at shortstop, but then what he could give them on the mound. Like, you know what you're going to get every time out. He's going to pound the zone. He's going to have a ton of moxie. He's going to hold the running game. He's going to just do all the little things. So really excited to see what the Tigers can do. And we're going to get our first looks at them at the Kickoff Classic against some good teams, which Coach Funkhauser never shies away from playing, the best competition he can. And he's typically kind of kicking himself jokingly at the Kickoff Classic because he always schedules the toughest Chicago teams that he can find. He wants to play the best. He wants to get tested, and he has the depth and the arms to match up with anybody. So, Edwardsville, they were kind of like the 1B, is kind of the way I looked at it for this year. And then at number 1A, or our number one team in the preseason Power 25, is Providence. Providence Catholic, coming off the 4A state title. They also, are no stranger to state. Like, they won 3 state titles in a row back in the 2000 teens. I don't know if that's the right way you say that or not. But
I love
they did it. Yeah, one of the more impressive things I have seen take place in Illinois high school baseball since I've been doing this is winning 3 straight state titles. But they got back on the horse last year, won another title, and goodness gracious, they hardly lost anybody coming into this year. So you look at these teams, I think the first thing we always look at is like, all right, who did they lose? Like, who do they have to replace? And then what do they have? And these guys were ultra talented last year and really did not lose much. So Tyler, get into this squad a little bit here.
Yeah, I think they returned 7 of the starting 9 that started in that title game last year. And not to mention they bring back their 3 best arms in Cooper Eggert, Nate O'Donnell, and Casson Gobert. So it just felt right. I think we all just kind of agreed like we had to put them at number 1 to start the year. Like, when you hardly lose much and you won state, like, this is a team that knocked out Edwardsville last year too, so they had that head-to-head kind of going for them. I know that's last year, but just absolutely loaded. I mean, they've got my pick for player of the year on this show, and Enzo Infelice. Like, guy came to our pro case and just continues to rake every time we see the guy. Cooper Eggert for me was the X factor for them. Just the two-way abilities. Like, he essentially was their ace last year. He can also be really dynamic in the outfield and really athletic left-handed bat towards the top of the lineup as well. And then, not to mention, like, Nate O'Donnell's back, and he was a CCL Blue Player of the Year last year at third base. will also pitch for him. What's nice about O'Donnell is he can give them flexibility. He can start and he can also relieve. Like he came in to close the title game last season, and then Casson Gobert was like maybe their best arm down the stretch. Like he really came into his own for the playoff run last year. Drew, I know. I want to say you saw him when they knocked off Lincoln Way West.
It seemed like he took the ball in all their big games in the postseason and just performed. Just kind of owned the moment, tons of strikes, and there's just a ton of upside in him as a prospect, like long levers, and yeah, through a bunch of huge games for them. So I'm a big fan of Casson. Like to me, he's a guy that should only continue to get better and build off of what he did last year. And yeah, that was a bit of a surprise, but gosh, you love to see like players step up in big moments. And he was certainly one of them. But like Eddie Olsta's another guy that I really like for them. That's a super impact bat. They're like 3 or 4 deep behind the plate too on the options that they can use, and then I think that gives them so much flexibility with Enzo. Like they can do whatever they want with Enzo, playing third, playing first. I think Coach Smith even mentioned he might play a little short this year if they had to. He also can come on the mound and pitch, and he's got a ton of arm strength. So just a couple guys that I was, personally eyeing, and some things that I had with their club as well.
And then one last name I want to throw in there was Sam Webb, who I think's probably going to start for him on varsity this spring. I don't know where he might catch. He could probably play some infield as well, but strong right-handed bat. Pete, I know he showed well for you at our preseason All-State, so that's just another guy they've got coming up. Just speaks to the luxury of the talent they have there. So that's what I got on Pravi.
And I don't want to completely discredit guys that they lost last year, because they did lose a very impactful senior in Jackson Smith, who's now at Bradley. I loved the left-handed swing. He could really, really run. But when you have as many pieces as they have, it almost seems like, all right, well, the next man up mentality, and should be a very, very, very competitive club this year, looking to repeat off of what they did last year.